If you've been with the channel for a while now, you'll know that I'm mostly dedicated to 10th skill racing and things related to that. I've said on multiple occasions that I plan to expand into 8th skill after I sold my first 8th skill I bought used about a year ago now, but only now have I been able to pull the trigger on an actual kit, mostly thanks to the generosity of my patrons and you guys simply for watching. Also, if you've been a regular viewer of my channel, you may know I've done a video like this before regarding 10th skill racing. However, as many of you know, 8th skill is an entirely different animal. In this video, I'm going to go over the actual cost of 8th skill racing, mostly electric, but I'll touch on nitro when necessary. Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and be sure to like the video if you found it helpful or enjoyable, and comment what you did to save money in this honestly needlessly expensive hobby. With that out of the way, let's empty our bank accounts. Before we find out ways to save money, we need to understand how much things can be if we buy everything new. There are some advantages to buying things new if you have the means to do so. First off, there's the fact that the stuff you're buying is, well, new. You don't have to worry about someone not taking care of the rig before selling it to you, nor do you have to worry about your car being out of date. It's new and untouched out of the box. If something is put together wrong, then you only have yourself to blame. The price of a new kit can vary depending on which brand you go for. There's the lower end prices from Associated, Techno, Hot Bodies, and Kyosho, surprisingly, to the higher end of X-Works, X-Ray, and TLR, to the positively stupid from Mugen. There's also the lowest end in terms of price with the TLR tuned Typhon roller, but we'll get to that in another video. Which brand you go with will mostly be determined by your own personal preference, which one is best supported at your local track, and of course your actual budget. Since we're here to just illustrate a point, and have no budget, let's go with this middle-of-the-road price TLR 8 Elite kit and add it to our cart. Next up we have the electronics. Since we're racing and obviously don't want to cheap out on electronics, we're going to go with one of the more mainstream popular brands that are supported at a local track. There are a few options to go with here, but since we'll be running a TLR, running Reedy electronics would be like putting an LS engine in a Skyline. You'll be pissing a lot of people off, and I'm pretty sure one of them has the capability of casting eternal damnation upon you. As a result, we have the options of Hobbywing, Tekin, and McLaren. You also may have noticed that each of these electronics here are a lot more expensive than 10th scale, and trust me, this is going to be a recurring theme going forward. With that being said, let's go ahead and grab this Hobbywing XR8 Plus and 1900 kV motor combo, which should be plenty for most people. Oh, and by the way, lots of nitro engines at the top of the line from companies like ProTech and Techno are usually either the same price as a motor and ESC combo, or more expensive by a couple $100, so keep that in mind for later. We also have the question of the steering servo. Again, we won't want to cheap out on this part of the car, and this time I actually mean it. Your steering servo's speed can really have an impact on how your car feels to drive, much like 10th scale. Unlike 10th scale racing, however, torque on a servo is much more important, along with internal durability. 8th scale buggies and especially truggies are under a lot more stress than your comparable 10th scale rig. This includes the steering servo. Remember that inexpensive but ultimately serviceable Savox 1258TG I run in all my 10th scale rigs? Yeah, that isn't going to cut it for very long with these things. Instead, we're going to need something much stronger, preferably with metal gears. This Savox 2290SG will serve us nicely, in the cart. Little side note as well, when it comes to nitro cars, you're going to need two servos, one for steering and one for throttle, so keep that in mind for later. Batteries are also quite important, so let's go ahead and grab some for our e-buggy. Now remember prior to when we were looking at kits, one thing I forgot to mention was checking to see which type of battery our buggy or truggy will actually use. Unlike off-road 10th scale, where 2S shorty packs seem to be universally used between different rigs and different brands, it seems as though each and every 8th scale e-buggy out there uses a different battery configuration. So, as a quick guide, I'm going to go over which batteries can use which types of batteries. The X-Ray XP8 can use two 2S packs in the shorty or stick configuration. The Associated RC8B4 can either use two 2S shorty packs or one 4S shorty pack. The Kyosho MP10E can use two 2S long stick packs, or if you have battery foam, two 2S shorty packs. The TLR 8 that we're using for this demonstration can use two 2S shorty packs or one long 4S stick pack. The Techno EB48 2.0, and I assume the 2.1, can use one long 4S stick pack or two 2S shorty packs. The Mugen Seki MBX8R can use one 4S shorty pack or two 2S shorty packs stacked on top of each other. The hotbody's E189RS, or E819RS, can use one 4S stick pack or two 2S stick packs stacked on top of each other. And lastly, the XWorks S35-4E can use one 4S stick pack or two 2S stick packs stacked next to each other. It's important to note that if you happen to run two 2S batteries, you're going to need to run a connector wire that runs from one battery to the other like this, preferably without the tear in it. Let's go ahead and grab this quality GenZay 6000 mAh 4S battery, these 5mm bullet connectors, and a simple charger made to charge one battery at a time. Next up we have the receiver and transmitter. Now once again, I made a video about the transmitters and how to choose one, so I'll be sure to keep it brief. What I will say is that in choosing your radio brand, you'll need to make sure to stick to one brand and grab a transmitter that has multiple model memory. Also, don't waste your money on an uber expensive transmitter that you'll never use to its fullest potential, like the Futaba 10PX, which on its own can be more than the price of the A-Scale kit that we just bought. It's also important to note that when buying a transmitter, you'll want to take into account how expensive the receivers are that go with it. Futaba, FlySky, and Spektrum receivers tend to be on the less expensive side, whereas Sanwa and Kailh proper receivers tend to be on the more expensive side. This is important to take into account if you ever want to expand your fleet of RC cars in the future, or if you're looking to just save a little money here and there. We'll be going with the Futaba 4PM with the R334 SBS receiver. Little side note, when it comes to receivers in nitro cars, you'll need to buy a receiver battery, along with a receiver switch in order to run the electronics of the car. I won't be adding this to the cart as we are going for a nitro car at the moment. Now that we got the big stuff out of the way, why don't we add up all the small miscellaneous stuff that I don't feel like going into detail with that we'll need anyway to complete our equipment list. First we have the transponder, pretty normal if expensive. Next we have a simple wheel nut wrench, a soldering iron, a set of Proline hole shots, pretty safe option for outdoor racing, and these ones are pre-mounted, a car stand, a camber gauge, pretty basic one, no need to spend dummy amounts of money on an aluminum one, same thing with the ride height gauge, and lastly let's grab a setup board, not an actual setup rig, just the board. With everything in our cart, why don't we take a look at the damage? Right, with that soul-crushing wallet rip out of the way, why don't we go over some of the ways you can get that number down as low as possible. And the first most important part would have to be buying your stuff used. Like I mentioned before in the video, there are advantages to buying stuff new. However, one of the biggest disadvantages would have to be the upfront cost, as you just saw. And that's where buying stuff used comes into play. If you take a look through the places like eBay or perhaps a Facebook Marketplace, you'll find plenty of great deals that are a fraction of the cost of what buying everything new would be. It's important though not to just check the general marketplace, but also check as many specific buying and selling groups as possible. These are where you'll find the most amount of deals and widest array of options. There are buy and sell groups for pretty much any RC brand you can think of, so don't be afraid to explore your options. Also, if you are able to head to any large events, say like Wicked Weekend or Masters of Dirt, don't be afraid to ask a couple of sponsor drivers there if they happen to have an old rig they'd be willing to part ways with. This also extends to RC equipment as well, from electronics to general equipment like wheel nut wrenches and setup boards. Speaking of options, why don't we ask someone else what they would recommend to someone if they wanted to get into RC on a budget.
How's it going, guys? My name is Mark Santamaria. I'm a racer and YouTuber and also podcast personality, social media personality. I always think that it's good to get one of the cars that are one generation back. So like the newest Tekno EB48 2.1 is about to release, or the NB48 2.1 is about to release. Get the one that's a 2.0, like one generation back. A lot of times people offload those really cheap. You get those cheap and get into racing and give it a try.
Like Mark said, if you're trying to get into RC racing on a budget, grabbing an older generation rig will usually be your best bet. Recently, the RC8 B4 came out, so if you go onto any Team Associated buy and sell group on Facebook, you'll see plenty of people selling their old B3.2s to buy the new kit. Same thing I imagine with the new Tekno A-Scale e-buggy coming out in the newer Kyosho MP10 truggy and buggy. A counterpoint, for lack of a better word, would be, wouldn't you want something that's the most recent for the sake of having the highest performing kit? In a way, this would be correct. Usually the newer kits outperform older ones, but only at the top level drivers would be able to actually make that happen. If you were to put Spencer Rivkin in a B6.2 and put me in the new B6.4 on the same track in the same race, it would be straight up embarrassing how many times he would lap me. The driver matters a lot more than the car itself, and if you're just starting out, chances are you're still a novice when it comes to driving, and as a result, you won't make full use of your car's capabilities. Hell, I've been racing for a solid 3 years now, and I still don't make use of my car's capabilities. Now before we wrap this up, I want to put something into context. No matter how you slice it, RC racing as a hobby is going to cost a decent amount of money. It is, for all intents and purposes, a motorsport, and like all motorsport, it requires a lot of upfront cash. You can always find ways to minimize this cost, such as the things I listed prior in both this video and the last one on the subject. However, the cost over time will come from car maintenance and wheels and tires, even if you buy them used. However, let me leave you with a bit of hope. If you've already come into RC to some extent, like for example crawling, bashing, drifting, or even 10-scale racing, chances are you already have a bunch of stuff needed to get going already, so the cost of building a full 8-scale racing rig will be significantly reduced. Removing all the things I personally already had, such as chargers, batteries, and so on, the total cost comes down significantly. Still not exactly cheap, but definitely more manageable. Lastly, if you already have an RC car, and there's a track nearby where you live, don't be afraid to go ahead and take your car to the track, no matter what it may be, and just have some fun. You don't need to have a purpose-built racing machine to have fun at an RC track. You just need a car and a willingness to learn. That's all for now. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and comment on some other ways you guys have saved a few dollars here and there since you started racing. Any form of engagement always helps me out. Also, if you want to help me out further, feel free to subscribe to my Patreon where I post updates on what's going on behind the scenes. Speaking of which, I'd like to thank my patrons Michael Williams, RC World Discord server, Casey Nix, Ben Reeves, Dave Armstrong, Ryan Lamb, Joe Jenkins, Juliet Lovelace, The Mailman 110, Brian Lofton, and of course, Morrison Watt. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.